The grandfather clock in the hallway of the Blackwood estate didn't just tick, it judged. In the oppressive silence of the library, the rhythmic sound was like a gavel striking wood, over and over again, counting down the seconds of a legacy that was about to be stolen. Outside, the Philadelphia winter was unforgiving. A blizzard had buried the city in white, but inside the Victorian mansion, the air was colder than the snow piling up against the stained glass windows. It was the chill of calculated greed. Mr. Sterling, the family attorney for over 40 years, wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead, despite the drafty room. His hands, usually steady with the weight of law and order, trembled as he shuffled the papers on the mahogany desk for the third time. He looked like a man who had walked into a lion's den, armed only with a toothpick. Across from him sat Vivian Blackwood. She was a vision of curated mourning, draped in black silk that cost more than most people earned in a decade. Her posture was rigid, her chin tilted upward at an angle that suggested superiority rather than grief. To the untrained eye, she was the grieving widow holding it together with admirable strength. To the man sitting in the shadowed corner of the room, however, she was a predator waiting to digest her meal. "I don't understand the delay, Mr. Sterling," Vivian said. Her voice was smooth, like velvet wrapped around a razor blade. She took a sip of water, her pinky finger extending slightly, affectation of high society that she had practiced until it looked natural. Edward was very clear. If the new draft cannot be found, the previous will stands. That is the law, is it not? Michael Blackwood, Edward's only son, stood by the fireplace, staring into the dying embers. He looked nothing like the vibrant young man who had graduated top of his class just 5 years ago. Grief had hollowed him out. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shoulders slumped under the weight of a loss that felt unnatural. He knew, deep in his gut, he knew that his father hadn't just died suddenly of heart failure. Edward Blackwood had been strong as an ox, but knowing and proving were two different universes, and currently Michael was stranded in the universe of helplessness. "It's not just about the law, Vivian," Michael said, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "It's about what Dad wanted. He told me 2 weeks ago he had made changes. He told me he was securing the future. He wouldn't just lose the document." Vivian turned her head slowly, her movements fluid and practiced. She offered Michael a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a smile that stopped at the mouth, leaving the upper face frozen, a classic sign of feigned emotion, though Michael was too distraught to see it. "Oh, Michael," she cooed, the sympathy dripping from her lips like poisoned honey. "Your father was confused near the end. The medication, the stress. He often imagined things that hadn't happened. We must respect his memory by not chasing ghosts." From the corner, Dr. Arthur Vance watched. He hadn't moved a muscle in 20 minutes. Introduced simply as Michael's security consultant friend from university, Arthur was a ghost in the room. He was a man who had spent the last decade deconstructing the human mind, peeling back the layers of social conditioning to see the raw, primal animal underneath. He wasn't listening to the words Vivian spoke. Words were lies. Words were easy. Arthur was listening to her body. He watched the way her hand instinctively went to her throat, her fingers brushing the large diamond pendant that rested there. The suprasternal notch, the hollow at the base of the neck, is the most vulnerable part of the human body. When people feel threatened or need to self-soothe, they cover it. Vivian had touched that necklace 4 times in the last 3 minutes. Specifically, every time the word missing or search was mentioned. It was a pacifying behavior, a subconscious attempt to comfort herself in the face of a threat. She wasn't grieving, she was protecting herself. Arthur shifted slightly, the leather of the armchair creaking. The sound drew Vivian's eyes. For a split second, her pupils constricted. Fear. Then, instantly, She masked it with a look of polite disdain. "And you are?" Vivian asked, as if noticing a stain on the carpet. "Arthur," he said softly. His voice was a deep baritone, calibrated to be soothing, non-threatening. He didn't lean forward. He didn't cross his arms. He remained open, a blank canvas, just here to support Michael. "Well, Arthur," she dismissed him, turning back to the lawyer. "I think we've wasted enough time. If the document isn't in the safe, it doesn't exist. We proceed with the 2018 will. The 2018 will. The one written 3 months after Edward married Vivian. The one that left the bulk of the estate, the company, and the mansion to her, leaving Michael with a trust fund that was insulting compared to the billions at stake. It wasn't about the money for Michael. It was about the erasure of his father's true intentions. It was about the victory of a woman who had systematically isolated Edward from his friends, his family, and eventually his life." Mr. Sterling sighed, a sound of defeat. I suppose without the original copy of the amendment, we have no choice but to file the previous testament for probate. I need to check the archives one last time, just to be absolutely certain I didn't misfile it in the office. But ... quotes you do that, Vivian said, standing up. The movement was abrupt. She smoothed her dress, her hands sliding down her hips. Arthur noted the sweat on her palms. She wiped them on the fabric subtly. High anxiety. Her blink rate had increased from a normal 15 times a minute to nearly 40. Her brain was processing information at a frantic pace, calculating odds, suppressing panic. In the meantime, I'm going to pour myself a drink. This ordeal has been exhausting. As she walked toward the liquor cabinet, Arthur observed her gait. It was slightly uneven, not a limp, but a hesitation in the left step. She was physically weighed down by something. Not grief. Guilt? No. Sociopaths don't feel guilt in the traditional sense. It was the weight of the secret. Secrets are physiological burdens. They release cortisol. They tighten muscles. They change the way we walk, breathe, and exist. Vivio was carrying a heavy, toxic secret, and it was eating her alive from the inside out, even as she smiled. This is the reality of the human condition that most people ignore. We think we can hide our sins, bury them in the dark corners of our minds, and present a perfect facade to the world. But the body keeps the score. The truth screams through our pores, through the twitch of an eye, through the tremble of a finger. And sometimes, justice isn't about finding a piece of paper. It's about reading the map written on the sinner's skin. If you ever felt that gut instinct that someone was lying to you, that visceral feeling that something wasn't right, you know exactly what Michael is feeling right now. It's a universal pain, the feeling of being gaslit by someone powerful. If you believe that the truth always deserves to come to light, take a second to subscribe to the channel and like this video. It helps us bring these stories of justice and revelation to more people who need to see the mask ripped off the villains of the world. Now, back to the library, where the temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Vivian poured a glass of amber liquid Edward's finest cognac. She didn't offer any to Michael or the lawyer. She took a long swallow, her eyes closing for a moment. When she opened them, she found Arthur standing right next to her. She jumped, the cognac sloshing over the rim of the glass onto her hand. "Good God," she hissed. "You move like a cat. Don't sneak up on people." "I apologize," Arthur said. He was close enough to smell her perfume Chanel No. 5, masking the faint, metallic scent of high-stress sweat. "I couldn't help but notice the necklace. It's exquisite. Edward gave that to you." Vivian's hand flew to the diamonds again. "The anchor." "Yes," she said, her voice tight. "For our first anniversary. I never take it off." "It's heavy," Arthur remarked. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of physical fact that carried a psychological payload. Heavy things can be comforting. They ground us, like secrets or memories. Vivian stared at him. Her eyes narrowed. For the first time, she perceived him not as a nuisance, but as a threat. But she couldn't define why. He was just a young man in a cheap suit, yet his gaze felt like a physical touch, probing the grey matter of her brain. "I don't know what you're talking about," she slapped, turning away. "Michael, get your friend under control." He's making me uncomfortable." "Arthur is just admiring the jewelry, Viv," Michael said, his voice dull. "Don't be paranoid." "Paranoid?" She spun around, her composure cracking. The mask slipped for 2 seconds. Her upper lip curled, a micro-expression of disgust. "I have just lost my husband. I am being interrogated by his incompetence of a lawyer, and now I have a stranger analyzing my jewelry. I think I have a right to be upset." She was deflecting, using anger to mask fear. It's the oldest defense mechanism in the book. When a liar is cornered, they don't cry, they attack. They create a scene to shift the emotional focus of the room from their deception to their outrage. Arthur watched the performance with the detached fascination of a scientist observing a lab rat navigating a maze. "You're right," Arthur said, lowering his head in a gesture of submission. He needed her to feel dominant again. If she felt safe, she would get sloppy. "I apologize, Mrs. Blackwood. Grief manifests in different ways. Sometimes we hold on to physical objects because letting go feels like ... betrayal." He used the word betrayal deliberately. He emphasized it slightly, dropping his pitch. He was planting seeds. Vivian stiffened, then relaxed. The submission worked. She exhaled, her shoulders dropping. "Exactly," she said, regaining her haughty tone. "At least someone understands. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to freshen up. This discussion is going nowhere until Mr. Sterling finds his competence." She walked toward the heavy oak doors of the library. Arthur watched her exit. As she reached the doorway, she paused. She didn't look back, but her hand brushed the door frame, lingering there for a second too long. Then she disappeared into the dark hallway. "She's lying, Arthur," Michael whispered, finally stepping away from the fire. "I know she is. She hated him. The last few months. She was different, cold, impatient, and Dad ... He got sick so fast. The doctors said it was his heart, but he was healthy. He ate right, he exercised." Arthur turned to his friend. "I know, Michael. You know." Michael looked up, hope warring with despair in his eyes. "Did you see something?" "I saw everything," Arthur said calmly. "She's terrified. She's in a state of constant high-level physiological arousal, fight or flight. But she can't flee because she needs the money. So she's fighting. Every muscle in her body is coiled tight. And that necklace, it's not just jewelry, it's a talisman. She touches it every time she feels the urge to confess or the fear of discovery. It's connected to the lie." "What do we do?" Michael asked. "Call the police. We have no proof. Just my feelings and your observations. The cops won't get a warrant based on body language." "No," Arthur agreed. "The law requires evidence. Tangible physical evidence. And she has hidden it well. A woman like Vivian, meticulous, controlling. She wouldn't destroy the will immediately. That's too final. Too risky if someone saw her. She would hide it first. Keep it as leverage or a trophy. Sociopaths often keep trophies of their victories. It validates their superiority. So we tear the house apart. If we start searching, she'll panic. She'll destroy it before we find it. We can't force her to tell us. We have to make her want to tell us." Arthur's eyes caught the reflection of the flames in the window. "We have to bypass her conscious mind. Her conscious mind is a fortress guarded by greed and self-preservation. But her subconscious is a screaming child wanting to be caught. It wants to unburden itself. I just need 5 minutes with her." 5 minutes. Michael looked at the door where his stepmother had vanished. "She won't let you near her. She hates you." "She hates what I represent," Arthur corrected. "The truth. But she's also arrogant. She believes she's smarter than everyone in this room. That's her weakness. Narcissism is a blindfold. She doesn't see me as a mentalist or a threat. She sees me as an inferior, and that is how we get in. Suddenly, the lights in the mansion flickered. The storm outside was intensifying. The wind howled against the stone walls, a mournful, angry sound. Then, with a loud crack of thunder that shook the floorboards, the power died. The library was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the dying fire and the ghostly grey light of the snow outside. "Perfect," Arthur whispered. The atmosphere in the house shifted instantly. The darkness stripped away the veneer of civilization. In the dark, the mansion felt less like a home and more like a tomb. "I'll go check the breaker box," Michael said, reaching for his phone to use the flashlight. "No." Arthur stopped him, placing a hand on Michael's arm. "Wait, listen." Above the sound of the wind, there was a sound. Footsteps. Rapid, clicking heels on the hardwood floor of the hallway. But they weren't coming towards the library. They were moving away, towards the east wing, towards the private study that had been Edward's sanctuary. "She's moving," Arthur said. The darkness spooked her. When the environment changes suddenly, the brain reverts to survival mode. Her first instinct is to check on her most valuable asset, not the jewelry, not the money, the will. Michael realized. She's going to check if it's safe. She needs reassurance. Arthur moved towards the door, moving with a silent grace that belied his size. "Stay here with Sterling. Keep him occupied. If the lights come back on, act like nothing is wrong. I'm going to have a conversation with Vivian." Arthur slipped into the hallway. The air was freezing here, away from the fire. The shadows stretched long and distorted across the walls. He could see the faint beam of a flashlight bobbing in the distance, moving towards the end of the corridor. Vivian. He didn't follow her directly. He knew the layout of the house. Michael had described it to him 100 times during their late-night study sessions. He took a service corridor, a narrow passage used by the maids, that would bring him out ahead of her, near the entrance to the conservatory that adjoined the study. He positioned himself in the shadows of an alcove. He slowed his breathing. He lowered his heart rate. He needed to be a void, a calm center in the storm of her panic. He waited. The beam of light approached. Vivian was muttering to herself. The composure was gone. In the dark, alone, she was unraveling. Double quotes, ... "Stupid old man, ... stupid storm. Just need to check. Just need to be sure, ... Her voice was a jagged whisper. As she passed the alcove, Arthur stepped out. He didn't jump. He simply materialized. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said. Vivian screamed. It was a short, sharp sound, cut off as she stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, the beam spinning wildly, creating a strobe effect that illuminated her face in flashes of terror. "You!" she gasped, clutching her chest. "You devil! Are you trying to kill me?" Arthur picked up the flashlight. He didn't shine it in her face. He pointed it at the floor, creating a pool of diffused light between them, a campfire in the wilderness. "I'm afraid of the dark," Arthur said, his voice dropping into a hypnotic rhythm. "It reminds me of being lost." "Do you ever feel lost, Vivian? Even in your own home?" "Get away from me," she warned, but she didn't move. She was frozen. The freeze response. The brain's ancient reaction when fight or flight are not immediately available options. She was captivated by his calm in the midst of her chaos. "It's cold," Arthur continued. He took a step closer. "The kind of cold that gets into your bones. The kind of cold that Edward must have felt. Don't say his name," she hissed. "Why?" Arthur asked gently. "Does it hurt? Or does it remind you of the medicine, the bitter taste in the wine?" Vivian's eyes widened. The pupils dilated until her eyes were almost entirely black. How did he know? He couldn't know. It was impossible, but the suggestion bypassed her logic and went straight to her amygdala. The fear center of her brain lit up like a Christmas tree. "You're insane," she stammered. "I'm calling the police." "You could," Arthur said. "But then they would ask questions about the timeline, about the pharmacy records, about the arsenic." He threw the word out like a grenade. They had no proof of arsenic. It was a calculated guess based on the symptoms Michael had described: the skin discoloration, the stomach pains, the confusion. But to a guilty mind, a guess sounds like omniscience. Vivian trembled. The cold was seeping into her, but the real chill was the realization that this stranger could see inside her soul. She reached for her necklace. She gripped it so hard her knuckles turned white. "You want to tell someone?" Arthur whispered. He began to match his breathing to hers, then slowly deepened it, leading her subconsciously to match him. This is the first step of induction, pacing and leading. It's so hard to carry it alone. The weight of the paper, the location, it's burning a hole in your mind. I. Double quotes. Her resistance was crumbling. The exhaustion of the murderer, the stress of the funeral, the fear of the will, it was all too much. "You want to find the bathroom?" Arthur asked, a bizarre non sequitur that served as a pattern interrupt. It confused her brain, creating a momentary gap in her critical thinking. "What?" She blinked, disoriented. "The bathroom," Arthur said, smiling kindly. "To wash your hands, to wash it all away. Let me help you. Let's walk." He gestured down the hall, not toward the bathroom, but toward the library. But in her confused state, she just followed the authority in his voice. As they walked, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, Arthur began the real work. "Imagine the cold is numbing you," he spoke in a rhythmic, melodic tone. "Numbing the fear, numbing the guilt. Every step you take makes you feel lighter. You don't need to protect the secret anymore. The secret wants to be found. Like a child hiding in a game of hide and seek. It's tired of hiding. You're tired of hiding." Vivian's walk became mechanical. Her eyes glazed over slightly. The shock of the power outage, the fear of discovery, and Arthur's masterful manipulation of her physiological state were inducing a waking trance. She was highly suggestible. "The necklace," Arthur said softly. "It's heavy, but the panel is light. The wood is warm. The panel... Vivian murmured. Her voice sounded distant, like she was speaking from underwater. "Yes. The panel where the truth lives. Is it in the bedroom?" "No," she whispered. "Is it in the study? The library?" she breathed. Arthur's heart hammered against his ribs, but his voice remained steady as a surgeon's hand. "In the library, where Edward loved to read. It's safe there, behind the ... He let the sentence hang. "An open loop. The human brain is wired to close loops. ... Behind the history. The history of Rome," she finished. "The history of Rome. A multi-volume set on the top shelf." Michael had mentioned his father loved the classics. "That's right," Arthur soothed. "Safe behind Rome. You did a good job hiding it, Vivian. You were so clever." He praised her. Positive reinforcement. It kept her in the trance. They were approaching the library doors now. The firelight flickered from within. "But now," Arthur whispered, leaning close to her ear, "we need to make sure it's still there. Just to be safe. Just you and me." Vivian nodded slowly. She was a puppet, and Arthur held the strings. But the strings were made of her own guilt and fear. He hadn't forced her. He had simply opened the door she was desperately trying to keep shut, and the pressure of the truth had blown it wide open. They stepped into the library. Michael and Mr. Sterling looked up, surprised to see them together, surprised to see the calm, almost dreamlike expression on Vivian's face. "Arthur?" Michael asked, confused. Arthur held up a finger. Silence. He guided Vivian toward the towering bookshelves that lined the west wall. "Show me, Vivian," he commanded softly. "Show me how clever you were." Vivian reached up. Her hand, usually so steady, trembled as she touched the spine of a leather-bound book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. She didn't pull the book. She pushed the molding beside it. A soft click echoed in the silent room. A hidden compartment, no wider than a magazine, popped open in the woodwork. Inside, rolled tightly and tied with a red ribbon, was a document, the original will. Vivian stared at it, her eyes blinking rapidly, as if waking from a dream. The trance was fragile. The sight of the object was breaking the spell. Reality was rushing back in, cold and brutal. She gasped, snatching her hand back. "No!" she shrieked, the sound tearing through the library. "No. What did you do to me?" She lunged for the compartment, desperate to grab the paper, to tear it, to eat it if she had to. But Arthur was faster. He blocked her path, not with violence, but with presence. "It's over, Vivian," he said. His voice was no longer hypnotic. It was the voice of judgment. Michael rushed forward, grabbing the document before Vivian could claw her way past Arthur. He unfurled it, his eyes scanning the text in the dim firelight. Tears welled up in his eyes. He knew, Michael choked out. He knew everything. "I, Edward Blackwood, being of sound mind, do hereby revoke all former wills. ... single quotes. Vivian collapsed onto the floor, her expensive dress pooling around her like spilled ink. She wasn't crying, she was hyperventilating. The game was up, the mask was shattered, but Arthur knew this wasn't the end. Our will only proved she was disinherited. It didn't prove she was a murderer. And a woman like Vivian, cornered and desperate, is most dangerous when she has nothing left to lose. She looked up at Arthur, and the look in her eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. "You think you've won," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You have a piece of paper. You have nothing else. I am still his widow. I am still the lady of this house, and you are just a trespasser." Arthur smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "The night is young, Vivian," he said, "and we haven't even talked about the wine yet." Vivian rose from the floor like a wounded cobra, graceful, deadly, and poised to strike. She dusted off her knees, her face regaining that mask of icy porcelain perfection. The panic that had seized her moments ago was being shoved down into the dark basement of her psyche, replaced by the cold, hard logic of a sociopath. She looked at the will in Michael's trembling hands, then at Arthur, and finally at Mr. Sterling, who was staring at her with his mouth slightly open. "A forgery," she declared. Her voice was steady, terrifyingly so. Edward was hallucinating in his final weeks. He scribbled nonsense on napkins. Anyone could have typed that up and planted it. "You, Michael, with your desperation. Or you," she pointed a manicured finger at Arthur, the magician with the cheap parlor tricks. "You planted it there while I was distracted." Michael stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Planted it. Vivian, you led us right to it. You knew exactly which panel to push. I was confused," she snapped, her eyes flashing. "This man, he hypnotized me. He drugged me. I don't know what happened. It's inadmissible. Any court would throw this out. Coercion, mental manipulation. You'll never see a dime, Michael. I'll tie this up in litigation until your grandchildren are old and grey." She was right, and she knew it. Without concrete proof of her intent, without a confession given of her own free will, a good lawyer could argue that she was under duress. She could claim temporary insanity, confusion, or trickery. The will might be found, but the battle was far from over. She was banking on the legal system's slowness, on the grey areas of the law. Arthur watched her, his expression unreadable. He admired her resilience. It takes a special kind of monster to stand in the wreckage of their own lies and still demand the crown. But he also knew that resilience was brittle. It was a hard shell protecting a soft, rotting center. He didn't need to win a legal battle. He needed to break the shell. "You're right, Vivian," Arthur said softly. The agreement caught her off guard. She blinked. "The courts are messy, lawyers are expensive, and reputation. Well, reputation is fragile. He walked over to the fireplace, picking up the iron poker. He didn't brandish it. He just adjusted a log, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. The firelight danced in his eyes. But we aren't talking about the money anymore, are we? Arthur turned to face her. We're talking about the relief. Relief, Vivian scoffed, crossing her arms. I don't need relief. I need you out of my house. The relief of the end, Arthur continued, ignoring her. He moved closer, invading her personal space again, but slowly, like a rising tide. Edward's end. It wasn't peaceful, was it? Heart failure is usually quick, but arsenic is a thief. It steals the breath, inch by inch. It burns the stomach. It creates a thirst that water can't quench. The room went deathly silent. Mr. Sterling gasped, a wet, choking sound. Michael froze. Vivian didn't move, but Arthur saw the pulse in her carotid artery jump. It was a sledgehammer hitting the inside of her neck. How dare you, she whispered, but there was no conviction in it, only fear. I see it in your hands, Vivian, Arthur said, his voice dropping to that melodic, rhythmic cadence he had used in the hallway. He was re-inducing the trance, using the shock of the accusation as a gateway. Look at your hands. Vivian looked down involuntarily. Her hands were trembling. They remember, Arthur said. The muscles have memory. They remember the weight of the powder. White, tasteless, odorless, just a pinch of love in his evening Merlot. Just enough to make him weak, just enough to make him dependent, just enough to make him sign whatever you wanted, until he didn't. Stop it, she pleaded, but she didn't look away. She was caught in his gaze, trapped in the gravity of the truth. He figured it out, didn't he? Arthur pressed. That's why he changed the will. He tasted the metal in the wine. He saw the way you looked at him, not with love, but with impatience. He was taking too long to die. He was stubborn. Vivian shouted suddenly. The dam broke. He was a stubborn, miserable old man. Yes, Arthur soothed, nodding. He was difficult. He didn't appreciate you. You gave him the best years of your life, and he treated you like a nursemaid. He was using the justification trap. By validating her twisted worldview, he made it safe for her to speak. He became her ally against the unfair world. I was a nursemaid, Vivian cried, tears of rage spilling down her cheeks. Cleaning him, feeding him, listening to his boring stories about the company. And for what? For a stipend? For an allowance like a child? It wasn't fair, Arthur agreed. You deserved more. You took what was yours. You took control. I took control, she repeated, her voice taking on a dreamy, distant quality. The trance was deepening. The reality of the room, Michael, the lawyer, the storm outside, was fading. There was only Arthur and the fire, and the truth. I had to. He was going to leave me with nothing. He told me, he said, Vivian, you're a vulture. A vulture. Me. So you silenced the vulture, Arthur whispered. I silenced him, she nodded. A chilling smile spread across her face. It was easy. The gardening shed, the rat poison. It's just arsenic. Pure, simple, effective. I refined it. I read about it in the Victorian novels he loved so much. Poetic justice. Michael looked like he was going to be sick. He gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white. He wanted to scream, to strangle her, but Arthur held up a hand commanding silence. They needed more. They needed the physical proof. You were so smart, Arthur praised her. But smart people keep records. Scientists keep journals. To track the dosage, to track the progress. You wanted to see the work you did. The great work, Vivian murmured. My masterpiece. Where is the masterpiece, Vivian? Arthur asked. Where is the journal? Is it with the will? No, she giggled. It was a girlish, horrifying sound. The will is business. The journal is personal. It's my heart. I keep my heart close. She reached for her necklace again. Arthur watched the movement. Not the necklace, Arthur said. The necklace is the anchor, but the journal. Is it in the bedroom? Under the mattress? Too cliché, she sneered, even in her trance. The police look under mattresses. No, it's in the greenhouse, with the orchids, the cattleya, the purple ones. They love the bone meal. They love the secrets. In the soil, in the pot, she whispered, buried deep, feeding the roots. Life from death. It's beautiful, isn't it? It is, Arthur said. It's a perfect circle. He stepped back. He had it. The confession, the location of the murder weapon, and the evidence. He looked at Michael, who was recording the entire interaction on his phone, his hand shaking, but the lens steady. Arthur snapped his fingers. A sharp, loud sound in the quiet room. Vivian, Arthur said sharply. Wake up. Vivian jolted. Her eyes cleared. She looked around, confused, as if she had just woken up from a nap. She saw Michael staring at her with a look of pure horror. She saw the lawyer weeping silently in the corner. What? She asked, adjusting her dress. Why are you all looking at me like that? I told you I'm going to bed. We will discuss this forgery in the morning. She turned to leave, her arrogance fully restored. She had no memory of the last 5 minutes. Amnesia is a common side effect of deep somnambulistic trance, especially when the subconscious protects the conscious mind from the trauma of confession. You're not going anywhere, Vivian, Michael said. His voice was different now. It wasn't the voice of a grieving son. It was the voice of the head of the Blackwood family. Excuse me. She turned, eyes blazing. This is my house. Not anymore, Michael said. He held up the phone. And it's not just the will. We have the confession, the arsenic, the journal in the greenhouse, the orchids. Vivian's face went pale. Not the pale of fear, but the grey of death. What are you talking about? You told us, Arthur said calmly. You told us everything. How you refined the poison. How you buried the journal with the cattleya. How you killed him because he called you a vulture. Lies, she shrieked. I never said that. You're trying to frame me. But then the sound of sirens cut through the howling wind outside. Blue and red lights flashed against the snow-covered windows, painting the library in a chaotic disco of authority. I called them, Michael said, when the lights went out. I had a feeling tonight would end with handcuffs. I just didn't know they would be for murder. The front doors burst open. The Philadelphia police, led by Detective Millera, who had known Edward Blackwood, personally stormed into the hallway. They didn't need to break down the door. The staff, sensing the shift in power, had let them in. Vivian Blackwood, Detective Miller announced, stepping into the library, shaking the snow from his coat. We have a warrant to search the premises, specifically the greenhouse. Vivian looked at the detective, then at Arthur. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She hadn't just lost the money, she'd lost the game. The mentalist had stripped her naked without laying a finger on her. She didn't scream, she didn't run, she simply collapsed inward. Her posture broke. The elegant socialite vanished, replaced by a small, terrified woman who realized she was about to die in a cage. It was him, she whispered, pointing a trembling finger at Edward's portrait above the mantel. He made me do it. He wouldn't let me be free. You're free now, Vivian, Arthur said, watching as the officers handcuffed her, free of the lies, free of the burden. As they dragged her out into the freezing night, her expensive heels scraping against the floorboards, she locked eyes with Arthur one last time. There was no hatred there anymore, only a profound, empty confusion. She was a creature of darkness who had been dragged into the light, and the light had burned her to ash. An hour later, the house was quiet. The police had found the journal exactly where Vivian said it would, be wrapped in plastic, buried beneath the prize orchids. It was a chilling document, detailing dates, times, and dosages. It was the diary of a madwoman who believed she was an angel of mercy. Michael sat by the fire, the true will in his lap. He wasn't reading it, he was just holding it. He tried to protect me, Michael said softly, even when he was dying. He knew. He loved you, Michael, Arthur said, pouring 2 glasses of the cognac Vivian had abandoned. He handed one to his friend. He couldn't save himself, but he made sure he saved you. That's what fathers do. Michael took the glass. He looked at the amber liquid, then at the empty chair where his stepmother had sat. How did you do it, Arthur? Michael asked. How did you get her to talk? She was a fortress. Arthur took a sip of the drink. Every fortress has a crack, he said. Vivian's crack was her vanity. She wanted credit for her crime. Most criminals do. They don't want to get caught, but they desperately want to be known. I just gave her an audience. You terrified me, Michael admitted. For a minute there I thought you were actually on her side. I was, Arthur smiled. Enigmatic. I had to be. To lead someone out of the dark, you have to walk into the dark with them. You have to hold their hand and tell them the monsters are beautiful. Only then will they show you where the bodies are buried. Michael shuddered. Remind me never to lie to you. You don't have to worry about that, Arthur said, clinking his glass against Michael's. You have nothing to hide. That's the real freedom, my friend. The truth is heavy, but it's the only thing that doesn't weigh you down. The camera pulls back slowly, leaving the 2 friends by the fire. The storm outside is breaking. The snow has stopped falling. The moon breaks through the clouds, illuminating the Victorian mansion. It no longer looks like a tomb. It looks like a fortress that has survived a siege. As the scream fades to black, Arthur's voiceover comes in, smooth and reflective. We all wear masks. Some are made of makeup and smiles, others of silence and distance. Vivian Blackwood wore a mask of the grieving widow to hide the heart of a killer. She thought she could bury the truth under the earth, just as she buried her husband. But she forgot one fundamental law of nature. Nothing stays buried forever. The truth is like a seed. The more dirt you pile on top of it, the harder it fights to grow toward the light. In the end, it wasn't the police or the lawyers who caught her. It was her own mind. The human mind is a terrible keeper of secrets. It wants to confess. It wants to be known. And sometimes, all it takes is a stranger in the dark asking the right questions to make the walls come tumbling down. If this story made you look at the people around you a little differently, if it made you wonder what secrets are hiding behind the smiles of those you trust, then leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had a gut feeling about someone that turned out to be true? I read every comment. And remember, the world is full of locked doors and hidden panels, but there is no lock that the truth cannot pick. Until next time, keep your eyes open. You never know who is watching.